if you can see my screen. Okay. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining in today after your work. Your busy day must be tired, but still took out time for learning. I always appreciate that. Um, today we are going to talk about SQL Server 2019 new features. And the SQL Server 2019, as many of you know, that was released about 10 months ago in November at the PASS Summit last year. Uh, so it will be SQL Server 2019's birthday in this summit, 1 year birthday. So it's still new and there are a lot of new features in there. We are going to talk about it. Um, and I hope, that you will be inspired to test it, or if you are already using it, to use it in production. I have seen many people, they have adopted 2019 in production already, so it's been a very, very good experience with them. About me, my name is Amina Lalani, and I am Microsoft. I work at Microsoft as a customer engineer. I was going to say a premier field engineer. Our titles changed just last month. So it's customer engineer now. I have about more than 17 years experience with SQL Server, starting with SQL Server 2000. And I am also a user group leader in Chicago. I speak at user groups like this today and SQL Saturday. So we are going to talk about, there are many features. So their complete list is on the left side on the bottom, but we are going to talk about these bigger items here: intelligent query processing, memory optimized StampDB, metadata, accelerated database recovery, and some other changes in SQL Server 2019. So by no way, this is the complete list. And I would encourage you to go and look at the complete list of all the features that has been added in 2019. So not everything is new features. Some are the enhancements, and those are also worth taking a look at. So intelligent query processing. This is a suite of different features about the query processing and to make the query run faster. And the intelligent word is added to that query processing because query is looking at it, looking at itself. A query optimizer looks at how the query is performing, and then it adjusts itself. It learns from the feedback, and then it changes the operator assignment or the memory assignment, or it make adjustment based on how the query ran the first time. And sometimes it does it while the query run, first part of the query has run, and it make the adjustment dynamically, so the next part of the query can take advantage. And in that, there are many features, but we are specifically due to the time constraint, and so I can show you other features in this 1 hour talk. I'm only going to look at table variable deferred compilation, approximate count distinct, and batch mode for row store. But here is the complete list of all the feature under the intelligent query processing. In SQL Server 2017, all the boxes that are not bold, these features were introduced under the term adaptive query processing. So adaptive joins, interleaved execution, batch mode, these were all introduced in 2017, and 2019 added all the bold boxes. And now all of them together is under one term called intelligent query processing. And so the idea is that we talked about that intelligent query processing includes the intelligence inside. It learns from the algorithms, it learns from the memory grants, and also it has different algorithms for how it treats the multi-statement table variable functions, how it looks at the table variable. So things inside the engine, that how it looks at the query when it comes into the query optimizer, it's also changed. Sorry about that. Somehow I have. Okay. Those things have also changed. So like look at the batch mode and the row mode. So batch mode was introduced in SQL Server 2017, and it works batch mode on the column store. It works very well with the column store, and when uh, and all these features that you see here are here because uh, from the customer feedback that they want to see these features, or when they open a case with the Microsoft engineering team, and this has been escalated to a third level engineer, and then it becomes that yeah, we need this feature in the product, so it comes back. So Microsoft listens to the feedback and then brings the feature. So this has all been thanks to the feedback of the community that has been given, that has taken time, because it's not easy to write to the voice and take time to explain the feature. So if you are doing that, thanks to you, these features made it to 2019. So now in 2019, row mode, which does not have a column store, can take advantage of like memory grant and other features. And we will see the demo of that. So table variable deferred compilation. So what is one of the biggest problem with using table variable? And as a DBA working for a long time, um, we always hear that the performance with the table variable. Sometimes when there is a large number of data inside a table variable, it's not good. Good for smaller number of rows, but not for larger number of rows. The thing is that before 2014, um, Query Optimizer just guesses and gives it that it is going to return one row. And 2014, engineering team said, one is too low, let's make it 100. So now, if for 2016 and SQL Server 2014, when table variable comes into the optimizer, optimizer gives it a guess of that it's going to return 100 rows. And in reality, if it's returning 10,000 rows, million rows, but it is just going to estimate is 100 rows. So what happens that the query optimizer make wrong choices, right? What operator? Like when I say operator, it means it's going to use nested loop join, or it's going to use hash match join. What operator is going to use? So based on that information that 100 rows are coming in, it might use only nested loop, because nested loops operator are good for joining tables with low number of rows in the input coming in. And hash match joins are better for the large number of rows that are coming in as an input into the operator. Generally, that's the case is. So that's what has been changed here. That now we don't give it a guess, one row or 10 row. It's going to learn from itself after the first execution. It's going to learn that this many number of rows are coming, and it's going to give the resources and choose the operators based on that number. So second, or in the middle of the query, um, it will change the query plan. So here we are deferring the compilation. So if you know the temp table, temp table always had that quality, that it temp table always perform well, because you can create indexes on it. In table variable you cannot, and there are some other limitation table variable. But temp table compilation is always deferred. The for other tables are, how many rows are in there is evaluated first, and then temp table was evaluated. So same thing is done now to the table variable, that it will be deferred the compilation till other um, operations in the query is compiled first. uh, so next feature we are going to look at is the, did I miss anything? No. Is the approximate count distinct. So one thing I forgot to mention, that all these features light up when you change the compatibility mode to 150. And 150 is a SQL Server 2019 compatibility mode. Uh, so you get everything when you change the compatibility mode of your database after the upgrade or after the migration to 2019. But this particular feature, approximate query processing, under it is an approximate count listing. It does not require 150 compat mode. It will work on any database, even SQL Server 2008 R2 or 2012. If you have restored it on 2019 SQL platform and has kept the compatibility mode to the old, this feature is this particular feature is available. But for other things, you need a compat mode 150. So approximate count distinct has a like a 2 or 2.5% of error rate. So it's like it says approximate, right? But the memory footprint is very, very low compared to if you just do count distinct, which will give you the exact number of rows that are distinct. But the memory footprint is huge difference. Another thing is that this is suitable, approximate count listing is suitable for applications such as for data scientists when they are doing an exploration of data. And we are talking about big data, where a petabyte size of data. And when they are exploring the data, this makes sense and it returns the result set faster, consuming less memory. Um, so you can see the benefit of it. So this will be a good application when you have a dashboard kind of application where the responsiveness of the result coming back to the user is more important than the exact count, because you are looking at the trend in the dashboard. So if there is a 2 or 2.5%, 3% difference, it's okay. The trend is not going to change that much. But if it's a banking application or stock exchange kind of application, every penny matters. So for that application, approximate count listing is not good. And those applications are not big data type anyway. Those are short transactional kind of uh, workload. So that this feature does not even make sense for that. Using that function does not make sense. Okay. So let's go to the third feature. Yeah, with the 97% probability that it will be very close. So batch mode on row store, we talked about a little bit in the beginning that batch mode with column store was introduced in 2017, and Microsoft engineers said that same advantage, and people also requested that there is some limitations of using column store. Column store cannot be created in all table, right? So if your tables are OLTP heavy, but you get some reports out of it. So some analytical work on your OLTP data. But if you create column store index, it totally changes how your OLTP works, and sometimes it does not result in good performance. And for sometimes, there are other features like if you have a file stream or something, that column store will not work with it, or any other feature with which a column store is not um, compatible. So what about those? There are a lot of OLTP load. So that's why Microsoft tested and said, that we can do the batch mode on row store also. And we will see in the demo that how much a big difference it makes. So when you see batch mode is a special type of execution mode. So any operation that is done, it is done on the batches. So batches is consist of 900 rows. Now you will ask me, can we change this number, or where this 900 is coming from? So that is coming from internal testing. It is hard coded. So even in batch mode on column store, it was 900 rows per batch. In row store also is 900 rows per batch. And Microsoft engineers have found out that this is the best number to go by. Anybody has any questions? Okay. So what happens here that when some analytical queries that you have to run, you can use it and it will use SQL engine will pick up the batch mode. So SQL query engine will decide whether the query will go batch mode or no. So, so this feature is on by default, but a query engine will decide that whether it will go. So it doesn't mean that every query is suitable for batch mode. Let's see. Time for demo. Let's see. Let me open the demos here. The correct one. Just a minute. Here it is. Okay, so let's look at the table variable deferred compilation first. I'm using a database at Wide World Importers Data Warehouse. Let's turn the statistics time and IO on, and then I'm going to do the actual execution plan on also, so we can see everything. So what we are going to do first, I'm going to change the compact mode to 140, which is SQL Server 2017, to see how the table variable deferred compilation work. It will not work, of course, but we'll see how it improves in 2019. And this is the query it is going to create a table variable here. And it has two columns in here. Then we are going to insert rows from the fact.order history. And this table has 3.5 million, approximately, because it's greater than one, it's saying quantity. So approximately 3.5 million rows will be inserted into table variable. Then we are going to use this table variable in a query, which is going to join with fact.order history extended. And this table has 29.6 million rows. So 3 million rows is joining with 29.6 million rows. So it's a big query. And I'm doing disallow batch mode because batch mode is like a kind of a silver bullet. It fixes everything and you will not be able to see the advantage. So I am disallowing, I'm disabling the batch mode on here. And then we are going to run the same query, table variable, inserting data into it and that's joining with the order history extended, but changing it to 2019. So let me run the whole thing from here. So it's clearing the procedure cache. So so you can see that it is not affecting the second result in any way. Okay, let's run it. So it's going to take maybe a minute or so if you have any question. Let me see how many people are there. We have only 7 people here. So we have Josh, Pallavi, Paul, Rick. Any question, guys? Let me, it's still executing. Let me mute myself for a Okay, so it's still running. So it's been 1 minute and 13 seconds. Okay, so.
Okay, sorry, my headset was muted. We don't have any questions at this time. So.
Okay, no problem. No problem. But the attendee can unmute themselves and ask, right?
Yep.
Yeah, they can do that. Okay.
Yep.
So it's running longer than normal. Usually it runs for 1 minute and 20 seconds. I've done this many times. I hope everything is okay here. Okay, it's finished. So it took 2 minutes. So let's go back here and let's see what it is showing us. So if we look here, the first 2017 query, it is looking at order history and it's doing, no, this is an insert thing. Okay, here it is, the actual work, the query that joins with the big table. Here, order history extended, it did about 30, 3.5 million scan, and 14 million logical reads, and 12,000 physical reads. This 14 million logical reads looks very bad here, but look at the time it took. It took 70.5 seconds. So it took 1 minute and 10 seconds. And the other one in 2019, it did uh, logical reads were very less, 755,000 compared to 14 million. So this is less, and scan count is also less. Physical reads are 0, and it took 45.5 seconds. So performance is better. The speed is better, almost 45 plus 40, almost half the time, or 45 plus 1 minute and 10 seconds. But the biggest gain is here in the execution plan. If you look at here, if I can show you both together. All right, so if you look here, the first one, if you look at the estimated number of rows to be read is 1, because table variable, it is giving it like it's a one row is going to be read, and actually it read 3.4 million. So there is a huge difference. And based on that, a nested loop operator was chosen. Nested loop join operator was chosen um, because it is thinking that on a small number of rows are coming, and nested loop is good for a small number of input. And then later on, all the other operations are suffering. So sort happened in TempDB because not enough memory was assigned, because this join was selected. SQL Server only assigned it to a 1.6 megabyte memory grant for 30 million and 3 million rows. And if you look here, the first of all, you see that query is going parallel. So here it is not going parallel because of the wrong count. That query doesn't need to go parallel. There only one row is coming in, right? So things changed here. And then if you look here, hash match has been shown, which is very optimal algorithm for higher number of rows coming in as an input. And then finally, if you look at the memory, based on that, proper memory was granted 1.3 gig to this query. So, so all this optimization as a DBA, we used to do it to improve our query. We will make it so that we will not use the temp table, table variable, use the temp table instead. We have to change some code and bring the query that query optimizer can make correct decision. But now it's learning from itself, so that's why it's called intelligent query processing. So next demo we are going to see for the row mode. Again, same database we are using. I'm going to turn on statistics time IO on, and then actual execution plan. So here we are, same thing we are doing for 27, comparing between 2017 and 2019. So here we are looking at this extended table, which is 30 million rows in here. And then we are doing some aggregate queries here, some quantity, some unit price and count star, some aggregation here, and then ordering by these two columns. And there is a group by here as well. So analytical type of query here. Same thing here. So let's run these two workload together. And since 2017 does not have a batch mode on row store, so we will see the performance difference here. And we are clearing the cache both time to make the result accurate for all of them. So this will finish quickly. And so yeah, first one already finished. Second one finished here. So if we look at here, in 2017, logical reads is 755,000 and two work tables, and it took about 12.5 seconds. And this took 6.5 seconds and took the same amount of logical reads, but almost half the time it took. If we look at the execution plan, so I want to show you that if this is order history, yeah. So look at the third line from the top, actual execution mode. It says row, right? Go down further and you see actual number of batches. It says 0. And now if you go here, you see that actual execution mode is batch, and actual number of batches was 32,915. So the operation, the analytical operation that query was doing, the group by, it was doing in the batches of 900 rows per batches. So it did only operation on 33,000 times instead of 3.5 million times. I mean 30 million times. Instead of 30 million times, it did 32,000 times only. So that's why the operation was faster. And if you look here, it is also using hash match because it is bringing everything into the memory and then doing the matching. And here, it is very quick. Everything is quick. And memory is the same. Memory is almost, no, it is proper memory. So 92 megabytes here, it's 12 megabytes here. So it made the correct decision to grant the memory here. If I right click and look at the properties here, you can see in the memory grant here that requested memory 92 and it used 25 megabytes. So it's still some memory is wasted, but it granted more memory and the query ran faster in half the time. But if you look here, and you will see that the query requested 12 megabytes. So memory size was correct, but the query ran a lot longer for that one. So here the speed was the advantage for row mode query. Any question, any confusion? Did I confuse you guys here in this one? So this table does not have a column store. If it had a column store, then SQL Server 2017 would have taken the advantage of batch mode. So SQL Server 2019 could take advantage because it has the row mode feature available. So that's the only difference here. Let's look at the approximate count distinct. Same database we are going to use, but this time we are only going to be in the compat mode 150. First, we are going to use count distinct, and then we are going to use approximate count distinct, and I'm disabling batch mode, the silver bullet. So let's see. I did not, oh, I have to do it again. I did not enable actual execution plan, which was, okay, it was quick thing, right? So let's do it again. So this is the accurate count, 29.6 million rows. So count distinct is giving us the correct time, correct rows, and this is 30 million rows. So this, if you do it, a math, it will be like 2.5% difference in the accuracy here. But if you look at how long it took, so this took like 12 seconds and this took 6 seconds here, almost half the time. The logical reads are same in both cases, but it did some more work in the temp tables here, work tables here. It did not have to do anything. So if I look at here, if you look at how much memory it was given, it used 1.3 gig. The count distinct used 1.3 gig, and this one is using 136 kilobyte. That's 1,000 times difference. It's a huge difference in the memory footprint. So that's why, for any kind of big data scenario, this is a huge saver in the memory footprint, and it runs faster also. All right, so let's go back to our demo, slides. And if I can go here. Memory optimized TempDB metadata. So what is the problem with TempDB? We all know that it has, it is the single database which is used by all the user databases to do the work, right? Snapshot isolation versions go there, index online go there, everything, temporary work, hash match is sorting, everything going in the TempDB. So it used to have a problem of shared page allocation, SGAM allocation problems, the contention in the TempDB. And for that, we recommended before 2016 to enable trace flag 1118. And that would take care of the problem. And from 2016, even at the time of setup, you can create multiple files, but the recommendation before 2016 was to create multiple TempDB files to take care of that allocation. So we won that battle, but still the contention remained for the system metadata tables. So there are system tables, just like in user database, there are user tables and system tables. TempDB also has its own system table where it keeps tracks of all the metadata, all the tables that are being created. It's changed schema, the table dropped, table created, table altered, whatever happening in the TempDB, it keeps track of those things. So now the hardwares are very faster, modern hardware, and things are happening at faster rate than TempDB was used to. So these kinds of contention at the system pages, system level is now occurring. And SQL Server 2019 is addressing that problem by putting that metadata tables, which are very small because it does not have any user data, and which are small tables, into the in-memory table. So they become, if you turn this feature on, so this memory optimized is not enabled by default. If you want it, you can enable it. It requires a SQL Server restart because it's a server level setting that you are changing, right? So, so the new problem is the latch contention in TempDB metadata. And the solution is to store TempDB in the system tables in the memory. And you can turn it on using this command, alter server configuration, set memory optimized TempDB metadata on. And this requires SQL Server restart. So we will see that, in the demo, that how much a big change this feature makes. But, if you will say that, Amina, if this is such a good feature, why didn't Microsoft made it a default in 2019? So in this case, Microsoft does not know everybody's business, right? Some are, so if you are using in-memory tables already, this feature will not work. So this is not compatibility. So you have to decide on your own to test it, whether memory optimized TempDB metadata is good for you or not. So let's see a quick demo for this one here. And let me close this queries. And uh, I have a notebook for this demo. And if I can open this notebook here. So in the Azure Data Studio, I have opened a notebook for memory optimized TempDB metadata, and this is a demo here. I have connected to the same instance of SQL Server. So I can show you, I'm connected to my SQL 2019 instance, AdventureWorks 2017 database. And I already have this database, so I'm not going to create it. And this is the query we are going to, this is the stored procedure we are creating. What it does, it gives you the list of the employees given in a given month. So if I give it a month parameter, I give a value of 12. So everybody who were born in December, this procedure will return the list of all the employee in the 12. So that's the simple procedure that it's doing. So let me just create that. I don't have to select it. It's just a bad habit working with. You can just run it here from, and you don't have to select it, and it's completed. Then I have to run this workload. I'm using an OSTress utility. And what this is doing, so let me show you. I changed it a little bit. So for my laptop, so it is this one. So this is going to connect to my SQL server and this database, and it is going to execute this stored procedure. And for the month of April, it's going to return the list. That's what it is going to do. And it is going to open 100 threads, 100 like connections to my database. And each connection will run this execution of this procedure 100 times. So just to create some load on my system. And then we are going to test it with this query here. So this query is using sysdm exec request and then cross applying with SQL text. And these two functions, page cracker, this is the page res cracker and DMDB page info. These two have been new in SQL Server 2019. Before we used to troubleshoot page related error, or if we wanted to look into the page, we will use dbcc int page or dbcc page commands. So those are very intrusive because in those commands you can see data also. So Microsoft don't want to expose the data, but here you can see all the metadata of the page that you need to troubleshoot your issue. So these two have been created. So we are taking advantage of that also. And anything that is page, any weight type that is page related, I'm just narrowing down to it. So right now, if there is nothing here, we will look at the result here. So let me kick off the workload here. If I can enter it. Okay, it started. It created 100 threads. And let me query this. Oh, this I did it before also. Okay. So this feature is on already and from my previous demo. So, okay, no problem. So you can, I will turn this feature off first. So I will turn this feature off. So it ran, but if I check, this is still on. So let me restart my SQL Server instance here. We have 15 minutes. What time we have? I have half hour or 15 minutes? Okay, 5 minutes more maybe. Okay. All right. So let's take a look at check again. So it's 0 now. So let's do our demo again. This time we are seeing the weight types, page latch X. So these are latch weights. It's happening on this TempDB data file. One is data file. And on this page, everything you can see the stored procedure running here and the page ID. So that page cracker and page info is giving all this information to us here. So see, so it's creating a table. Then every time it's executing, it's creating a temp table because that's what the stored procedure was doing, right? Creating a temporary table every time. So this is why it is causing, because it's 100 connections are doing the same thing here. So let me run it again. So see if it's done or not. So look like it's done. So just to confirm it, this ended. All right, so now we will go back and I will change it to back to on. Okay, and if I run this, it's still off here. So I have to restart my SQL Server again. Okay. And we are going to run our workload again. And if we go here and look at this, and we don't see anything. And if you look at still running, and we look at here again, it's not. So no, page latch weight is totally gone. Still it's running, but there is no weight. So that's the demo for this one. So just want to make sure I turn this on. I'll turn this off before I leave this demo. And I have to restart my okay. All right, so let's go back to our demo, accelerated database recovery. This is a game changer, accelerated database recovery. So what's happened when the database is coming up? So you are failing over and failover cluster FCI, right? You're failing over the whole instance to another instance. All the databases have to come up. They have to recover. If you look at the error log, SQL Server error log, you will see that 10% completed, 20% completed. It takes time. Similarly, if you are failing over in the availability group, the recovery has to happen. So this recovery process, the algorithm was written in 30 years ago. In 1919, it was a white paper written by some university students. I think, I forgot, it was Berkeley, which university. The student wrote a paper and then Microsoft adapted it for their SQL Server. And this recovery process is based on that. Analysis phase, redo phase, and undo phase. So here is what is happening. So suppose this is the transaction log and the crash happened here. So the crash happened here. So what happens then when the database is coming up, the first phase of the recovery is analysis phase. It creates a list of two lists, one to undo the transactions, and what transactions will be undo, that at the time of the crash, those transactions were running. but they were not committed. So if there were long running transactions or whatever, the transactions were running, they were not committed, so they need to be undone. Secondly, it creates is all the transactions that were committed but were not written to the disk. So that is a redo. You have to do the redo. And then you have to read from all the way back to the last committed transaction, from oldest committed transaction, and then apply this. And this takes a long time. And that's why the recovery process, if you are running a long running query and if you kill it, you all have experience maybe, that it takes as long as it took to work, because it has to all roll back. So now with the new process, this has been done faster, and it is done because new algorithm has been written from the scratch. Totally recovery process has been changed. And again, this feature is not enabled by default. You know your workload, you choose, and you can enable it. It's available in SQL 2019. And all these features that you see in the on-prem SQL Server 2019 version were in the SQL Azure first. 1 or 2 years, these features worked there, and they made sense and in there, because in cloud environment, uh, and working with big data, the time that things happen faster is very important. And so these are all these features were first introduced in Azure. And when they come to on-prem version of SQL, they have already been tested in the public, in the production workloads. So this has also been tested. So what is happening in the new recovery process? So before we understand the new recovery process, there are some concepts. So there is a concept of persistent version store here. And persistent version store keeps the rows, previous changes of the rows. So if you are updating or deleting a row or rows, the previous version is stored in the database itself, in the persistent version store. And then when recovery has to be done, it does not have to read from the transaction log. It can just revert it. It just flips it. It just changes it back to the previous version. And since it's in the same database, the operation happens instantly, like not even a millisecond. It just happens instantly. So that's why the process works so fast. Another thing that is making it faster is the aggressive truncation of the log. So when the long running, you must have experience, like you're running a index rebuild, right? It's running long, transaction logs are growing and growing, and sometimes you run into issue of disk running out of space, because you cannot checkpoint it, you cannot truncate the log while the transaction is open, it's still going on. But in this process, it does the aggressive checkpoint and truncation of log while the transaction is running, because it does not care about the transactions, because the transactions are persisted. All the version transactions are persistent in the version store. So all the metadata transactions that you are creating a table, or you are altering a table, or creating an index, any kind of metadata work you are doing, it is stored in the S log. It is the memory log which eventually commits to the transaction log, but in the meantime, it is S log. So it asynchronously commits to there. And then this cleaner process comes in periodically and cleans the version store. So there is a flag on the page that this version needs to be cleaned, no longer work, because it is changed again. So previous version is not valid anymore. So this cleaner process goes through and looks at all the flags on all the pages and goes into that page and clean it. So it's not scanning the whole database. It's looking at the page, and there is a bit flag page that it looks for, and then goes into those page and clean the older versions. So this is also asynchronous, not affecting the current activity of the database. Database size will grow because of the persistent version store, and based on the workload that you are using. But then again, if your database is very short transaction, very fast, and like again, give the example of stock exchange, short transaction, but very fast. You don't need accelerated database recovery. You need accelerated database recovery for the long running transaction, because that is going to take time in the recovery when you are rolling it back or you are recovering database. Short transaction don't need this feature anyways. right? So it is good. Persistent version store will not grow as much. And another thing is that the log size of these databases will be very small. So that's where you will save the space here. Any question here? And the process that when the persistent, when you are recovering and the version goes from the version store to the database, when you are undoing it, right? Or so that is called logical revert. That process name is logical revert. So let's go and look at the demo. And here, yeah, so it's all this, so analysis phase takes still the same time, but the redo phase only goes from the last checkpoint, not from the oldest committed, and it finishes very quickly because this can read from the slog, the rest of it, and this whole thing is reading from the slog, the undo, and undo is happening asynchronously. Database become fully available when this part is done. So database become available for user activity very quickly. Here. So I will just be able to do this demo and then we'll finish. So here is AD, what is that one? 2 demos. Okay, I have 2 demo, but okay, let's do one here first. All right, so I'm going to turn this feature off on the wide world importers data warehouse. And then we are going to delete 231,000 rows in fact.order table. But I'm opening the transaction. I'm not committing it or rollbacking it. So it will be an open transaction. So we'll see how long it takes to delete. And we don't have the accelerated turn on. It is a 2019 database. So I'm doing so many demos, I don't know. Yeah, it's 150. All right, it's done in 14 seconds. All right. And we will see how much space was used while it was deleting. It used 30% of the log space. Now we will checkpoint because transaction is open, right? And then select, and it did not budge. It is still 30% used. So again, we are going to roll back. Let's see how long it takes. So it takes 7 seconds. So it took little less than what it took to delete. So that's good. So now we will checkpoint and space is cleaned. So now it is going to checkpoint and now the log space is only 4.2% used. Let's turn this feature on and we are going to delete with the open transaction 231 rows. For 15 seconds. Let's see how much log it used. It used only 15%, and the first one used 30% while deleting these rows. Let's checkpoint it. Transaction is open, transaction is running. And then it truncated half of it at least, or not half of it, it was 15%, it's 11%, some of it. So now let's roll back and look at how long it takes. Instant rollback, not a single second, instant rollback. And if we checkpoint and look at the size, that was 4.4%, it's just 0%, almost half percent. So that's the advantage of accelerated database recovery. And I will end the demo here, but I just wanted to take 5 minutes and just show it, no more demos here. That this benefits I want to talk about, see, if you have a software assurance,
So in SQL Server, not in SQL Server, when in the past summit 2019, when SQL Server 2019 was announced, they also announced the improvement in benefits of the software assurance. So that is not only for SQL Server 2019, it's for any version of SQL Server you are using. So if you have a 12 core a primary server and you have an availability replica of 12 core, you don't have to pay for it if it's not read only. It's just there for failover, so you don't have to use. You're free. But if you have a DR server, same capacity, 12 core on-prem, you have to pay for the DR server because you are doing a log shipping or whatever, you know. But now you will get that DR server on-prem free also. And in addition to that, you will get one more DR node free in Azure. So you can have two DR, one on-prem, one in Azure. So those are the benefits that has been included in the price of the software assurance. So another improvement that was done here in the, I don't know where these lines came from. Okay. Okay. So when you are installing SQL Server in the setup, you will see that the reporting services are not part of it. It is a separate installation, and Java connector for Hadoop file system is now natively part of, just like R and Python, Java is now part of the SQL Server engine. It's all for the big data cluster that also was enabled in SQL Server 2019 to make all these possible. Another improvement in installation and setup is that now it knows how much memory you have. So this is a screenshot of my SQL Server, when I was installing it 2019. So it automatically gives this. So I have 16 gig of memory. It gives 12 gig. It left for, I can change it, but it's by default it's selected for me max memory, so I don't forget after the installation to set the max memory. So that's an improvement, less work for DBA. And of course, you know, TempDB multiple files was added in SQL Server 2016. You can create multiple files. It suggests 4 files for you, and you can create more files for you. And now in 2019, you can set the max stop. So so that I have 8 cores. So it says here, if I want to change the cores, I can do it here. Set up the max core. And these are other changes, you know. So there are database scope configuration. I'll skip this slide. I wanted to show you something else. So these are some of the other features. So resumable online index creation. This is a very, very good, you can stop you can program that how long your index creation script will run. Right? If you have a job and you say that next time you have 2 hours only for that, after 2 hours, it will stop. And you will say that, you know, next time your job will run again the next night, it will pick it up from where it left. And again, it will run for 2 hours and complete. And you can also suspend it, resume it. It will pick it up from where it left. Even the server goes down and comes back again, you just have to issue a resume command. So resumable online index rebuild was added in 2017. So now the feature is complete with the creation in 2019. UTF-8 support is here, and SQL data discovery and classification and vulnerability assessment. These are great feature to comply to complete the compliance, right? If you are a GDPR compliant, if you have international customer and European customer and you are compliant, this will help you classify your data. And vulnerability assessment will check that your columns, check the columns and their data types, that this has been classified or not. Because when you classify them, it becomes the part of the metadata of the column, that this column has been classified. So when you run this vulnerability assessment, anything that is classified will pass the test. So anything like a date of birth, you know, it will look at it and says, oh, there is no classification there. So it will flag it that this should be classified as something. So these are great tool available in the Management Studio 17.5 and over. So thank you very much. I appreciate your presence. And if you have any question, you can reach me, Twitter, SQL Hands, and my email here if you want to reach me. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Amina. That was a really cool set of demos. I did want to ask though, for the TempDB metadata, you may have answered this question, but why do you have to restart the SQL Server?
Because you know that TempDB is a temporary database. Every time you restart SQL Server, it creates a new TempDB. Anything was in the TempDB is lost, right?
Yeah.
And TempDB is a server level, SQL Server level, instance level change that you're making. So you're not making a change inside a database. So like, take an example of accelerated database recovery. For that, you don't have to restart a SQL Server because it is only affecting that particular database. It is not affecting the other databases or all server or the server level. But anything you do with TempDB, it's a server level change.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
You take into effect, you have to restart.
Okay. Yeah, I enjoy all those features. I really want to try it against an HDFS cluster, and the GDPR compliance is really cool. So
yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's very good. You can. I can just. I actually stopped sharing. So let me just share again, just briefly. I can just show briefly here. Where is my? So I don't have to do my PowerPoint here. Here. So if I just look at my favorite database here, just go and I go to here, classify, data discovery and classification. If I just go to classify data here, it is going to, so there are 31 recommendations. And I have 10 classified columns. From the previous demos, I have already, so these columns are classified. And if I look at this, these are not classified, because to be classified, I have to select it, and I have to accept the selection, and then I have to save it. Then it will become the part of the metadata of the table. So this is the classification. It will show you that, it just picked up with the name, address looks like a information type contact. So if you go down, you say, no, it doesn't, it's not a contact. It's my, it's my other information. You can change the information type where you want to put. And confidentiality has some options here, that this is a GDPR confidential. No, it's just a confidential. It is general, it is public. So you can classify based on that. And once it is done, then you can run your vulnerability assessment. So same database here, here. So I will run one. So I already scanned it 3 days ago this database. So I open an existing scan. So I will open an existing scan. I just want to show you 9.6. Yeah. So this is what it showed me. So it is showing me that sensitive data column. So there are other things, but let's look at this one. And this report is showing me that these tables, so look at these tables, and that these are not classified, or they are failing the test, because these are looks like credit card number, text amount, something. So let me pick one. I will just pick in the address table, address line 2. So I will go in my classification, and this is a person.address table, right? So I will go here, look at the here, and person.address table, and this is classified already. Person.line 2, address line 2. So I will accept it. Accept it, I'll save it, right? And this time I will run the vulnerability assessment. Doesn't take that much long time. So I will scan for vulnerabilities, and I will it will save it with today's date. So just do OK, and it is going to open it. So if I go to the same sensitive data column, I should see that finding will not be there. So if I go to person.address table for address line 2 is not there. So you see that it is not flagging it because it notices that it is classified now. Now if I go to this classification and I want to view a report, This is the what I classified, show in a report form. So it is showing me, if I open this person schema, it is showing me all the tables and their columns. So you see address line 2 is now part of that. It is confidential, it's contact info. And this is a nice report, it does not replace your auditor, but this is something you can give them. It shows you that which server, which database is you are producing the report, how many columns are there. There are 546 columns in this database, 12 has been classified, right? And then out of 76 tables, 7 tables have sensitive data. And then there is a date, there's a Microsoft logo, and you can produce this report and show it to them. So it provides provides them somewhere to start from. The auditor can start from, that, okay, this has been identified, let's look at the other. So it's a good tool to self-audit yourself in your company.
Oh, that's really neat.
That's all I have.
Yeah,
Thank you.
No, very cool. Yeah. Are there any other questions from the rest of the group? Anything
Looks
from...
like chat on Twitch has been pretty quiet. Nothing out there, but I do want to say, Amina, you did a great job and love the layout.
Thank
It was
you.
very good.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Appreciate. So you guys will see me next month also.
Yeah, no,
we're looking forward to it.
Absolutely, yeah. If you could, share the deck with the fox@pass.org email. We can put the materials up on our website, and then this will be posted on YouTube. And yeah, if nobody has any questions, we can call it a night. And thanks again.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Yeah. See ya.
Bye-bye.
Take care, Amina.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.